Hello everyone, and good evening to all of you, and welcome to this youth symposium and this our new committee. And I'm sure all of you must be very excited to hear today's session because very interesting. We have with us Mr. Narayan Mohan and Kala Subramaniam, who are from Singapore, basically from here, but now settled at Singapore. And recently, in the first on February end, we have received and signed the Memorandum of Understanding with the Singapore Institute of Chartered Accountants that the members who are staying over there at least for 6 months at Singapore, our members, ICI members, who are staying at least for 6 months in Singapore, they will get the Singapore membership of Institute of CA Institute over there also. And that is very welcome move, and Singapore opening doors for our members also. So then you can have added advantage and added degree to pursue your career at Singapore further. So we thought, let us have a session that opportunity in Singapore and also the corporate tax, what all our both the learned speakers can share with us. So with this words, every Friday, please block your time 4 to 6 in the evening. We are there to add your knowledge, and I also thank our moderators who are working very hard. I can see Deep Chera working very hard for all of you so that best of the faculties and best of the sessions come to all of you with where we can serve the best knowledge. We have with us today C.A. Zeel Voda, C.A. Ronak Gada, C.A. Nirav Sayya, and our team, Shanu, Jaya, Rahul, and where is these three are present today. So the support of office is also great. Every Wednesday, every Friday, we are having the Sky High Symposium and Youth Excellence Symposium. So with these words, I welcome my very learned speakers, my moderators, and all my young audience. Welcome all of you. And I am sure you will find this session very interesting. Thank you so much, and over to the moderator.
So for our first session, we have CA R. Narayan Mohan sir. Apart from being a qualified chartered accountant, he is also a fellow member of Institute of Singapore Chartered Accountants, a fellow member of Association of Chartered Certified Accountant United Kingdom, and a Certified Public Accountant Australia. Sir has been a past chairperson of Singapore Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry and an accredited tax advisor for income tax and GST along Singapore Institute of Accredited Tax Professional. He is a senior practicing chartered accountant, having been instrumental in setting up various Indian companies in Singapore and provides business and audit services to more than 1,000 companies worldwide. So with this brief introduction about our speaker, sir, today, I welcome you, sir.
Yes, Mr. Narayan.
Good evening. It's a great honor to address all fellow accountants. What is interesting is that I used to speak a topic about Singapore, the gateway to do business with ASEAN. Why I've chosen the topic is that a lot of people in India should know about what are if you set up a company for business people, what are the opportunities available. When you go to a property agent and ask him, which is I'd like to buy a property, can you show me one or two properties? Then they will start asking you what your budget and everything. If you ask him what are the three things to decide to purchase a property, immediately he will say location. The same way when you ask me to set up your company in ASEAN, the best place to put your office is Singapore, Singapore, and Singapore. Now, there are more than 8,000 Indian companies established in Singapore. They are the number one companies. The reason is that among the companies from the other parts of the world, that's what I mean by that, companies from China are established here. They have the opportunity to set up companies either in Hong Kong or in Singapore to have the international operations. Usually they source from China and sell it out throughout the world. As far as then you have companies from Australia, New Zealand, Korea, you name it. Every other countries have got a contingent of companies here. None of them are in manufacturing, except few top companies in the world who are in manufacturing in Singapore. All the others are all mainly in trading. The trading in Singapore, which is happening 3 times of GDP, which is very interesting than most of the countries in the world. What's the reason why the trading is promoted here? The reason is that being a small country, after separation from Malaysia in 1965, the rulers, the government people started checking out throughout the world to find out how we can make this economy moving, giving employment to everybody, and be very prosperous. So what they have decided to do is to follow an open economy, whereby there are no restrictions of goods coming in and no restrictions of goods going out. There are no restrictions of money coming in and money going out. So there is no need to go to any of the government agencies to get approval for receiving your money or remitting your money outside. Now, coming back to when I say 8,000 Indian companies, why they do it? Because when any Indian company want to do an international trading operations, they would like to choose Singapore. Reason is that documentation is only done here. What I mean by documentation is they come to Singapore, set up a company called ABC Private Limited, and then after they set up the company, because of the RBI regulations, still we have capital restrictions in India. You can only form companies in 2 styles. One is ODI, Overseas Direct Investments, or through LRS scheme, Liberalized Remittance Scheme. So 99.9% all the companies established in Singapore will be a wholly owned subsidiary of an Indian company. Now, coming back to after the company is incorporated, what these companies do. If they are in timber business, they will try to source timber from Papua New Guinea, Australia, Cambodia, Vietnam, and then export to any of the ports in India, especially either on the southern side, it's Cochin, on the northern side, it will be Calcutta. So what I mean to say is that the purchase and sales or import and export is booked in the books of Singapore ABC Private Limited, it has been incorporated, but goods directly go between, if it is sourced from Papua New Guinea, it goes to the Calcutta port. Good doesn't come to Singapore. The same way you think of pharmaceutical items, also the Indian companies, what they do, they buy from, all manufactured in India, it goes to Africa, but the Singapore company will be invoicing for both import and export. The export invoice is raised from here to African country, and then they book the profit, and then the tax is paid in Singapore. The corporate tax is 17%, and I will now talk about some more thing. I was suggesting you to have a company in Singapore for ASEAN market. Why ASEAN market is that if you want to do business in Indonesia and other 9 ASEAN countries, it's more convenient for you to have a company in Singapore. If it is required, you can even set up a subsidiary of the Singapore company. Now the Indian government allows you step-down subsidiaries. There are no restrictions. Even step-down subsidiaries can be established back in India because of the change in regulation. The corporate tax in Singapore is 17%. Very interesting thing I want to tell you. Once you make a profit, you pay a corporate tax of 17%. There is no dividend declaration tax. There is no dividend tax. That's very interesting to note. So any company which is establishing their operation in Singapore, they're very clear. If they make $1 million, there are some concession for a small and medium-sized enterprise, which I come and talk to you a little later. So automatically you calculate 17%, which is $170,000 will be paying tax. There is no other subsequent tax the company will be involved to pay, like the dividend declaration tax and the dividend tax. When I was saying there is no dividend tax, even you pay to your local company in Singapore, which is the shareholder, or you pay the same dividend to a resident or a non-resident, there is no tax payable for subsequent payment of the dividend. The other interesting thing is that there's no capital gains tax in Singapore, and most of the financial institution investments an individual is making are all exempt from tax. Buying and selling of shares, buying a mutual fund, fixed deposit interest, all are exempted from tax. So what is the tax payable by an individual? The tax payable by an individual is what he earned in director's remuneration or director's fees or commission earned by him, or the rental income which is going to get. Other than that, there is no possibility of any financial transactions. Tax will not come in. Now, I told you the corporate tax is 17%. When I started practicing in Singapore, the corporate tax was 40%. Slowly and steadily, the corporate tax has come down. If you look at the earlier chart, the corporate tax has come down considerably from, it is only showing 26%, but in fact, if you look at the first diagram, it shows the corporate tax of 40%. Now it has come down to 17%. For past few years, the tax is at 17%. Now, I would like to compare the corporate tax with other countries in the world. Most of the countries have between 20 to 25%, which you look at it, the chart. Now, another interesting thing which I want to tell you is that the OECD countries, you know about it, there are more than 230 countries which have signed up with OECD countries, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, in which Singapore is also a member. What has happened is that OECD has come out with the concept of BEPS, base erosion and profit shifting. India also has come out with the concept of POEM, place of effective management. You are all aware that the Indian Income Tax Act was also amended. So if the directors are sitting in India, most of them are resident Indians, and they operate companies outside India, the tax department wanted to tax these because the management control, whatever the profit made, suppose you set up a company in Singapore, whatever the profit you make will be subject to tax by adding it that the place of effective management is in India. Ministry of Finance has come out with a lot of circulars. I've also spoken on this subject in the past, whereby that itself is a separate topic to be discussed. Now, coming to that's a BEEP 1, where the OECD countries Financial Action Task Force has come out with plans whereby country by country reporting was introduced. What is the purpose of country by country reporting? All of you know about it. The intention is that people can understand what business you have done in a country, what are the expenses you have incurred, what's the profit you generated, and what's the tax you have paid in that country. Suppose a multinational corporation is operating in more than 35 countries or 40 countries, the country by country reporting can provide the information about all the activities in a particular country and makes you understand what is the operation in that particular country, and then what's the profit attained and is the fair tax is paid. That is BEEP 1. Coming to the BEEP 2, which they were talking about the second pillar, and they are planning to have an introduction of 15% corporate global minimum tax globally, where most of the countries have signed, being part of the OECD, they all signed. They would like to follow 15% shortly in 1 or 2 years' time. European Union, UK, and few countries have already started implementing the 15% minimum tax. And then which is for all multinational corporations, where the euro $750 million of business is done, to avoid the base erosion and profit shifting pillar 2. What Singapore is going to do on this, because when the Singapore tax is 17%, if they have to bring it down to 15%, what some of the companies in Singapore are enjoying because of the pioneer status where there is no tax, because they wanted to bring this type of industries into Singapore. Some of them have been given a concessional tax rate of 5% and 10%. What the Singapore government is going to do is that in this budget, they have announced that most of the countries have not implemented the minimum tax. We will also wait, watch, and move and to find out the movement of other countries. But they are planning to have a top-up tax to differentiate whatever the benefit given to them and then make it to 15%. So by doing so, the top-up tax, they will see to that the OECD's requirements are met. Another thing which I want to tell you is that in Singapore, certain types of companies, I was telling you tax exempted, which I was telling you also global traders program. You can ask me what is global traders program. When I was telling you the Indian companies buy timber outside the country and sell it back to India. So it's a transshipment. None of the goods come to Singapore. In Hong Kong, as per the Income Tax Act, if you're going to have a separate company, usually the auditors in Hong Kong will advise if both the legs of the transaction are not going to be in Hong Kong, you establish a company and call it as transshipment, whereby transshipment is not subject to tax. So Singapore felt, whenever when client comes to us from India or other parts of the world, we advise them very clearly, due to the transshipment, if you set up a company in Hong Kong, there is no tax, but if you set up a company in Singapore, even transshipment is subject to tax. So they will tell us, let us start the company here. When the volume increases, we will decide whether to shift it to Hong Kong. Now, coming back to in Singapore, what they have done is, if you are going to have a transshipment of 100 million and above per year, over a period of 3 years, they have a program called Global Traders Program. You apply for that, they will bring down the tax to 10%. Tax is not waived, but they bring down the tax for a Global Traders Program. You have few restrictions on $1 million of expenditure to be incurred in the Singapore books, which will not be a problem if the company is going to engage in any of the trading activities. The freight charges and the other expenses will come nearly to 2 million if they are going to do a volume of $100 to $150 million per year. There is another interesting thing in Singapore. I told you there is no capital gains tax. There is no gift tax in Singapore. The branch profit, dividend income, and service income, if it is earned outside, brought to Singapore, is also not subject to it. The income which is coming has suffered overseas tax with the headline tax of 15%. What I mean by headline tax is that there is a taxation in that country and it has got a 15% headline tax. Then the dividend income, branch profit, and service income is exempt from tax. The intention is that there is no round tripping. The income earned in Singapore is not passed on to overseas countries and brought back. The best example I can give you is, you cannot send the money to Dubai and bring it back, because Dubai there is no tax, but they are going to introduce from 1st of June a 9% corporate tax, but still it is below the 15% of the tax what they are talking about. So what is subject to tax in Singapore? Income earned in Singapore, even if it's a transshipment by a company, is subject to tax. I told you, any income earned abroad, remitted to Singapore, transmitted or brought to Singapore are subject to tax. It's also applied for individuals. So if an individual set up companies outside, and even in his personal name, world income is not taxed in Singapore for individual. When it comes to corporate, if you set up overseas operations, if it is a separate entity, consolidation only takes place. It is not subject to tax back in Singapore. The global taxation concept applies more to an individual than to a company, which I want to be very clear for all the youngsters to understand. There are few incidents where concessions are provided in the income tax, which are, if you are going to set up a family office in Singapore, which I will brief you later, or a variable capital companies to manage funds in Singapore, which also will have their tax exemption status are there. So tax on corporate income is imposed at 17% on your profits of both locally incorporated companies, foreign companies incorporated in Singapore, and also foreign branches. Singapore uses only single-tier tax system. That's what I was telling you. There is no dividend declaration tax and a dividend tax. Over 80 countries, Singapore has signed double taxation treaties. When there is no double taxation treaty signed with any country, for non-treaty countries, unilateral tax credit is provided to you. What I mean is that if you suffer any tax and that income is brought to Singapore for taxation, automatically the tax credit will be provided to you for the tax paid in that country. There is also, in order to promote small and medium-sized enterprises to do business in Singapore and to accumulate profit so that there will be a better cash flow for them to grow bigger and better, there is a tax exemption, which I will go to the next slide and explain to you on that. That comes later on that. I will cover this and go on to the small companies tax exemptions. The record keeping requirements of company must maintain records for 5 years. I want to tell you about what is the assessment year in Singapore. In India, it is April to March, and then the next year is from April to March is the assessment year. In Singapore, financial year is from January to December is the financial year, and the next year, January to December, is the assessment year. So most of the Indian companies, even if it is going to be only one subsidiary in Singapore, will close the books by 31st March. I've told you earlier, it will be 100% only one subsidiaries. You have to close by 31st March, even the Singapore company incorporated, because the reason is that it has to be, after paying taxes in Singapore, it has to take back to India for consolidation back in India. So how do you pay? There is no advanced tax concept. What they call it is estimated chargeable income has to be filed. When you have to file the estimated chargeable income, from the closing of the financial year, within 3 months, you have to file your estimated chargeable income. So if you're closing by March 23, before June 23, you file your the estimated chargeable income, in which you say that you have done a business of 20 million, your expenses is nearly expenses minus the purchases, and your net profit comes to say 500,000, and say that my tax liability is $85,000. File the estimated chargeable income. They will make out an original assessment order to collect the tax from you. This $85,000, you can go back to them to say, I would like to pay in 10 installments. What they expect you to do is that they will ask the bank to transfer, called gyro system. You authorize the bank to transfer on a monthly basis $8,500 over a period of 10 months. Your taxes are paid in installment. This is the way the advance tax is collected in the form of estimated chargeable income. What are the type of assessments which are made for companies or individual is original assessment, additional assessment. If some income is omitted, you inform them or they find out after questioning you on the in writing to you. Then the additional assessments are made. If both are not correct, they go in to make an amended assessment. So that's the way the assessment orders are made in Singapore. After you file the ECI, you get the assessment order. If you have not gone to choose to pay the tax in installments, the tax liability is payable within 1 month from the date of passing of the assessment. The next one is, I already explained to you about the record keeping, the year of assessment, and the estimated chargeable income. Now I come back to the small and medium-sized companies, which are supposed to pay the tax, and I told you to make them to plow back the profit. So if your company earns up to $200,000, your tax is calculated only on $100,000, or in fact, you pay only 50% of tax of 17% if it happens to be your income happens within a bracket of $200,000. I already briefed you about the dividend tax. There is no dividend tax. But always, what we do is that we issue the dividend vouchers. This is for the purpose of the recipient are aware that the company has paid a dividend, and the dividend certificate is kept for records for future declaration to people. If they happen to ask you, how did you get the source of income? It becomes an evidence for you to show the dividend certificate. Direction of tax at source, which I want to talk about this because any any non-resident provide any service in Singapore is subject to direction of tax at source. Because the service is rendered in Singapore, the non-resident is supposed to file the tax. So it is the company's duty bound to direct tax at source. If you ask me what is the percentage of tax to be deducted, you have to verify the DTA to find out if it's for rent, royalties, interest payments. All these things you have to check on the DTA to find out. Since Singapore has signed with 80 over countries, you have to look into that to find out what is the percentage of tax to be deducted at source and pay that. People always ask me, the guy is sitting in India providing consultancy to me, or I have asked him, I'm going to employ him to be in my payroll in Singapore. He's going to look around for business for me. In that case, is there any deduction of tax at source? My answer is no. Reason is the service is a non-resident sitting in India, and the service is provided in India. So the service is not provided in Singapore, and the expense which is incurred and charged to the company is incurred only and exclusively to earn an income for the company. So it will be allowed as an expense in the books of the Singapore company. So I have clearly mentioned whatever the royalties you pay for intellectual property usage, management fees, interest, or subject to director of tax at source if it is signed with a Singapore company by a overseas party. Taxation of intellectual property. What is interesting thing is that in order to promote Singapore in 3 areas, which is internationalization of Singapore companies, digitization, and innovation purposes, Singapore promote and provide a lot of tax concessions. So if the company is going to use any of the copyrights prior to 2016 financial year, right out over a period of 5 years, subsequent to 2017 onwards financial year, company can choose to write off over a period of 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. What is important is that you have to file a declaration form to say that I would like to write off over a period of 5 years. So once you make a declaration and file it along with your tax return, is irrevocable. Means that you have to stick on to 5 years. You cannot change your mind and say, I want to shift it to 10 years and 15 years. So if you have chosen 10 years, then a declaration form is filed. You have to stick on to the 10 years of writing off of your IP rights. Singapore is also have signed a lot of treaties whereby to have a company in Singapore and park their IP rights, wherein which the IP is looked after by the Intellectual Property Act and the rules and regulations in Singapore. See, what happens is that this is 5 to 10% is from the DTA, as I was telling you. If you are going to be get into a franchise is treated as royalty. Hence, based on the respective countries' DTA, the tax will be deducted at source. Now, coming into the writing down allowances, which you know about it, if you buy assets in a company, then it can be write off as a capital allowance and annual allowance. So the DTA can be claimed, as I tell you, after 2016, can be claimed to over 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years. I come to you later about writing off of the carry forward losses and the capital allowance and the annual allowance for plant and machinery. In the budget in this year, what the government has said is that in order to promote innovation, companies should spend more money. So what they have done is that they allowed companies, if they are engaged in R&D conducted in Singapore, registration of intellectual property, acquisition and licensing of intellectual property rights, innovation carried out with any of the institution of technical education, or training given to the staff, you can claim four times of the money spent. If you're going to spend $10,000, you are eligible to get $40,000 towards the deduction to be made. So what happens is that when you are not having sufficient profit to write off this 400,000, same like you will have carry forward losses. You will also have capital allowances for the plant and machinery if it is not being set off with the current year's profit, and it can be carried forwarded any number of years. There are no restrictions, including the 400% of the expenses incurred in any of these areas can also be carried forwarded and to be offsetted in future years. If the company is running short of cash flow, you are also entitled to convert the money spent up to 20% of the $100,000 towards claiming a cash benefit from the department, income tax department. So when you are filing your tax return, you have to claim that you would like to claim the cash back from the department, file along with the tax return, cap of $20,000 per category. You have 5 categories, then you can make a claim of $100,000 in a year. If the company is in need of improving the cash flow, instead of claiming the tax deduction. I was talking to you about the Global Traders Program earlier, where for transshipment and where you have a considerable amount of business done of $100 million, you have to give an estimation over a period of, if you have done $100 million in the current year, in the next 3 years, we are going to cross $300 million of business. You can file the application to the Trade Development Board in Singapore, which a government department comes under Ministry of Finance, and tell them that you are going to have, over a period of 3 years, your business, transshipment business, will exceed $300 million, in which case the government will give you a concession rate of tax of 10%. And I was telling you also that you should incur an expense of $2 million annually and employ 2 or 3 traders where the conditions will be given to you upon submitting the application, and they've gone through, and also they qualify the items what you're going to do, and also qualify the expenses to be incurred so that you continue to enjoy the tax benefit. More than 270 companies have enjoyed the tax benefit where the business is more than under $250 million per year. As I was telling you, the qualifying trade income is physical trade, and then derivative trading is allowed, structural commodity financing is allowed, or these are the things concerned with that particular trade which you're going to submit the application. So, substantial offshore trading is important. If the company has got local trading or one of the leg of the transaction is from Singapore, then you have to eliminate those transactions because the concession of 10% tax rate doesn't apply to your local transaction. Under the Global Traders Program, you are allowed to do, which is given to established operations and who are going to adhere to all their list of conditions, which will contribute to the manpower, logistic benefit, and spin-off benefit is going to be there for Singapore. Singapore shipping income exempt from tax. See, various countries in the world are registering various ships. Panama is world famous, Marshall Island, and a few countries in the world have got a lot of ships registered, and the income earned from the income earned by the shipping companies are exempt from tax. So, if a foreign vessel take up a Singapore flag and engage in all these activities, the income earned by the shipping company is exempt from tax. It can be a locally incorporated company or it's a foreign company having a Singapore flag can request for tax exemption. So if you are going to carry persons, goods, livestock, you also carry out a towing operations, ship chartering services, use of vessels for offshore extraction of natural gas, sale of vessels. Sale of vessel is a capital gains. Income obtained from construction of ships. All these things you will be exempted from tax, but you have to make an application and then it is not automatic. So what you have to do is you have to inform the tax department of your activities, get the approval from them under the provisions of the Income Tax Act and carry out these activities. Now I move on to venture capital fund companies and fund management companies. Usually people pool funds from various people and start investing in venture capital funds. When they are going to invest in the venture capital companies, the venture capital companies are exempt from tax for a period of 15 years. What are the conditions required? Again, you have to make an application to your government department. What is interesting is that the venture capital company should have a minimum fund size of $10 million and it should incur a local business expenditure of 100,000 per year. And it is until the tenure of the fund. Means if the fund is in existence for 15 years, you are expected to spend $1.5 million over that period and invest certain percentage in the unlisted Singapore-based companies. Naturally, you know pretty well, these venture capital companies cannot invest in a listed company. It is not a venture capital company. It has to invest in all startup technology companies. So what happens is that when they say unlisted Singapore companies means you cannot invest 100% of your fund in an overseas venture capital companies or startup or technology companies. They have to invest a certain portion of the total fund in some of the local startup companies and technology companies. The legal status for a venture capital company, when I go into the fund will have an income because of the services provided to the venture capital company. The fund management company also has to make an application. It should be an approved fund company because Monetary Authority of Singapore, equivalent to Reserve Bank in India, issues licenses upon receiving applications, various type of licenses. You should have the required experience and qualifications to request for these type of licenses. So if you get a fund management license or exempt from fund management, which is usually given to banks because they already got a banking license, or you got a license for some other category which also taken into account fund management, then you are exempted from taking a separate license. In that situation, your income earned by managing a venture capital company, fund management company, you are having a concessional rate of tax of 5%. The legal status for a venture capital company can be a limited partnership, company incorporated in Singapore or elsewhere, as I was talking about, and variable capital company. In fact, you call me one day to speak about variable capital companies. There's a new concept. It itself takes 1 to 2 hours of time to explain to you what's a variable capital companies. When that was introduced, this is nothing but a fund management company. You know the difference between a venture capital fund company and a variable capital company. A venture capital company is interested to invest into a new startup technology companies. When it comes to variable capital company, they are going to manage the funds. If the guys are interested to pull the fund to put into startup companies, which are technology startup, meditech, edutech, or electronic startup, or even companies engaged in Web3, or the new ideas have come, ChatGPT, artificial intelligence companies. So the prospectus will explain what is the purpose of the fund being pooled. People invest in the fund. You get the Monetary Authority of Singapore's a license to run a venture capital company because you are collecting funds from various people, investors, and making the investments. So you should have a license to carry out the activities and subsequently make all these investments, pass on the return to the part and parcel, which is the expected of all the people who are making investments. So the memorandum of investment will be given to you. What is the intention, purpose, where the funds will be invested. So one of the Fridays you call me also, I'll be in a position to explain to you what is the status of various capital companies. When this act was enacted in Singapore, I was thinking why they have not made it part and parcel of the Companies Act so that separate provisions can be kept within the Companies Act. But it is a mind-boggling. The Variable Capital Companies Act go in line with most of the provisions in the Companies Act. It is actually, they say that the Companies Act provisions apply, but some of the areas which totally different from Companies Act, that's the reason why they come out with the Variable Capital Companies Act in Singapore. Family office. You all will start asking me, what is family office? In the world, Switzerland is famous for, all the people know that Switzerland is famous for chocolate, watches, but Switzerland is also famous for private banks. The whole concept of private banks came from Switzerland. I'm not going to talk about the numbered accounts which was offered globally to people to keep the secrecy of the money being kept in Switzerland. What is family office is that if you have 2-3 million, you want to manage yourself. But if you have 100 million, 200 or $300 million of wealth in a family where father and mother, son, daughters, they might have sold a business which they are running for years and obtained like $200, $300 million. They have to manage this money. So they will not have the capability, experience in handling the funds of the family. So they go to all these private banks to assist them, help them. Or they will have in-house attorneys and also investment bankers to see that the funds are invested, managed for the family office. Singapore has become a crazy place for the world to set up family offices. More than 800 family offices are set up in Singapore. And you can ask me why people, also when I was talking about VCC, why they set up a VCC or a family office in Singapore. I told you if any investment is made by an individual in the Singapore Income Tax Act, most of the financial purchase, sale of shares, profit made, mutual fund are not subject to tax. But if it is done in the company, it is considered as you are doing it as a business, then they will tax you. So once you set up a variable capital company to manage funds, or you have a family office to manage your own family wealth of $200, $300 million, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, equivalent to RBI in India, issues you tax exemption certificates under the Income Tax Act, whereby the profit made by a VCC or a family office are not subject to tax. That's the reason why people are very keen to come to Singapore. Not only they enjoy the infrastructure, they feel the English-speaking people, and also the rule of law and a fantastic legal system in Singapore. So if it is a single family office, no license is required because you're going to manage your money. If it is a multi-family office, not only you manage your funds, you also start telling people, other families to put the money with you. It becomes a multi-family office. You started handling somebody's money, in which case you will need a license from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. You can ask me, in a company, if 10 people come as shareholders and make an investment, you don't need a Monetary Authority license because they are part and parcel of the company. Not only they act as directors, they are also managing their own money and they are also as shareholders of the right in the shareholders meeting or give direction to the directors to run the company. So you are managing your own money. There is no required for a license from any authority. But if you are not a director and a shareholder and managing the funds of third parties, naturally, you should have the experience of managing somebody's money with a prudent way of handling the money and with a good corporate governance. That's why the Monetary Authority of Singapore moves in to make it compulsory to have a license to manage these companies. The other two interesting thing, I spoke to you about the family office. Now I speak to you about variable capital companies also. Now, what has happened is previously, prior to coming out, these regulations have come 6 months back. Prior to have these regulations, people with $2-3 million were also requesting for tax exemptions. Then the government felt there are more than 700 family offices in Singapore. Variable capital companies, there are more than 1,000 companies established in Singapore. Then you can ask me where these people are coming. A lot of people are coming from China, Taiwan, Hong Kong. Do you know what is the geopolitical situation which is happening in these countries? Making them to feel to have a safe, secure place to keep their money, park the money in one more destination. So they are coming to Singapore to set up family offices and variable capital companies. The same way people from Europe, America, even from India have started. You know about it, Reliance boss, Mukesh Ambani has also set up a family office in Singapore. Dyson, the Britisher who manufactures all the electronic items for household, has also put up a family office in Singapore. So the government has come out with minimum amount of investments required to make an application. Both 13O and 13U are concerned with the tax provisions where you have to seek monetary authorities' approval to get a tax exemption after you set up the company. And 13H is for venture capital companies. Not only the fund requirements are there, the employment of the professionals to manage should also be there. If it is a single family office, the owners of the single family office, if they are educated, having experience to manage funds, then it is permitted for them because they are not handling a third-party fund. So the monetary authority is more lenient to allow them to carry on their own activities. There is also minimum requirement to spend money on an annual basis. This is the last slide. I want to conclude by telling a few things before I come to an end. So, the definition of SME in Singapore is entirely different. In India, the concept is you call small and medium, micro, small and medium enterprise. In Singapore, we call as SMEs. SME definition is very huge, which is a business up to $100 million, less than $100 million, less than 50 staff, and there should be a 30% local content. What do you mean by local content? Even if a foreigner comes in, if he has got 70% and joined with a local person who has got 30% stake, is permitted, is allowed into the definition of SME. What is the advantage of SME? The various other government departments, tax exemption schemes are allowed to be enjoyed if you are an SME. But the tax provision, whichever is the tax provision, is across the board. It doesn't come into the definition of SME because it's an income tax act. Any company incorporated in Singapore can enjoy all the tax concessions and provisions which I talked about to you. Another interesting thing I want to tell you before I conclude is about a definition of small companies in Singapore. Before I talk about the definition of small companies need not be audited. It can compile the financial statements as per the requirements of the Financial Reporting Standard and comply with the Companies Act because the directors come under the Companies Act. And the accounting standard is also one of the provisions of the Companies Act. So if you comply with both Financial Reporting Standard and the Companies Act, it need not be audited, it can be compiled, provided it comes into the definition of small companies. What is the definition of small company? Small companies over a period of 2 years, the company in Singapore and the group companies, if it is held overseas by a company, combined together, if the turnover doesn't exceed $10 million, asset doesn't exceed 10 million, the number of staff in this doesn't exceed 50, it comes into the definition of a small company. Means you don't have to do the audit, the directors can do the compilation. There are a lot of management companies established who doesn't have a license to practice, also carry out all these small companies compilation work. So the auditors are not burdened to carry out an audit of smaller companies. Actually, it is in line with most of the countries in the world. In the US, most of the private limited companies need not be audited. In Australia, New Zealand, UK, if the threshold of 10 million or something less than that, no audit is required. You can compile the financial statement and move on in life, which I wish that should come to India so that the auditors put their time productively into bigger companies and spend their time quality-wise and do a better service to the nation. Thank you. I end my talk. Thank you. Did I proceed earlier than the schedule? Or I can get into the question and answer section.
Thank you, CA Narayana Mohan, sir. Sir, we have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
First question is, sir, how to start bookkeeping and outsourcing service for Singapore taxpayers?
Very interesting question. You do not have to start in Singapore. You can even start it in India. A lot of guys take it as BPO services in India. Very interesting, I want to tell you. There's one company in Pune who always lies with me. There are two different companies. One company do transfer pricing advice globally, including Singapore companies. They lies with all the auditors, all the transfer pricing. I've not touched upon transfer pricing. I can talk about it if you want more questions on that. So they provide transfer pricing advice. Another group of companies, they will call me and say they Google, find out how to set up companies globally. If they get a client to set up a company in Japan, they Google, find out what are the basic requirements, approach an auditor in Japan and say how much you charge me. I have a client to set up a company in Japan and set up companies globally. So anyone want to do bookkeeping in India or any of the back office services in India, including compilation, which I was talking about, you can do it in India. You don't have to come to Singapore to set up a company.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, what is the local expenditure criteria for global trader program?
I told you $2 million, and I was suggesting you also that if the company, say, for example, if the company is engaged in timber, cost of timber freight itself will come to 30-40% of the timber cost. See, practically I do audit, so I know exactly how people meet. See, for the other companies, what happens is usually any company freight may form 5%. And I told you Global Traders Program is for companies above $100 million per annum turnover. So if your freight comes to 5%, already the freight will come more than $2 million of expenditure required. Freight is the major expense for most of the companies, right?
Thank you, sir. The next question is, are investment or earning of family offices are tax exempted in Singapore?
Yes, I told you. That's the reason why they are setting up. I told you, when you do it personally, there is no tax. The advantage of a family office is three things. One, you go to the Monetary Authority of Singapore under 13O and request for tax exemption. Two, it's succession planning. And three, if people want to do philanthropic activities, they can do it professionally through a company.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, what is the crypto taxation and legalization landscape in Singapore?
No, they have not said that. India said 30% tax. In Singapore, it is treated as an income. If you earn an income, like a normal tax is applied. You reflect as an income and pay the normal tax.
Sir, the next question is, how to get client from Singapore for BPO service? Do we can get some kind of a local contact or any site references available to find out any professional opportunities?
Very, very interesting question. I used to speak about entrepreneurship. The first thing I talk about in entrepreneurship is that if you come out as a professional, either a doctor, a lawyer, auditor, if you are too good in technically capable to handle the file and do the job, is only 50%. How do you bring in business to your firm is the other 50%. So you have to use all your, I do both. I wear both the hats. You have to go for functions, parties, meet people, make yourself known. So whenever I go to any function or parties, everybody knows me because continuously I've gone and attended all the functions. Who have invited me, I'm there. Or you become members of all these associations. I want to tell you a very interesting thing. Since the new concept of the 13O, 13U all have come, I've become a member of the Singapore Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. I paid $2,000 to become a member. They're going to have a conference. I'm going to attend the conference. So you have to be near to the customer, make himself known, and work hard to bring in business. This is an art. You can't teach this art of bringing in business. I give you a very interesting news. If you allow me to speak, I speak for hours. Listen, I attended one guy put it in the newspaper. I'm going to teach you about entrepreneurship. I went and attended just to find out what he's going to say, which I don't know. What he did is after the entire conversation is over, took out a book in his hand, and I was sitting on the 5th row. You know what he said? This book is for one of you. You know what my mind said? Go and grab it and sit in your seat. I rushed up, grabbed the book and sat in my seat. Then the guy asked me, why did you come and pick it up? My mind said, the book is for me. So I came and grabbed it up. And you said that it's one of us. 55 people were sitting in that place. So the initiative should come from you to look for business. You have social media marketing today. I have to teach you. You have YouTube, all these social media marketing, Instagram, LinkedIn, everything go all out to look for business. Even today, I'm thinking how to look for business. You should be restless.
Agreed, sir. Sir, we have completed with all our questions. There is one request from the members to share the PPT what you have presented during the session.
And I'll send it to you. I'm happy to share.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Women and Young Members Excellence Committee, I am glad to express my vote of thanks to our esteemed speaker, CAR Narayana Mohan sir, for accepting our invitation and enriching the knowledge of our members on the topic overview of corporate tax in Singapore. So your words of wisdom and knowledge will definitely help our fellow members to move their journey towards excellence and professional opportunities. I would also like to thank all of you present here for making the time to be with us today. Thank you. I would request Ms. C.A. Kala Subramaniam to take it forward, please.
Before going it forward, I would like to introduce Mrs. Kala Subramaniam. She is currently working with Inam Asset Management Singapore as a PT Limited as a director and chief operation officer. She has a vast experience of more than 24 years in an investment management, corporate finance strategy, and she has done various diversified leadership roles and was a part of management team in corporate restructuring, operations, and financial management. She is a commerce graduate from University of Madras. She is also a chartered accountant from India, a certified public accountant of Australia, and a management accountant India. She also holds a degree in ITA. She would like to also state that she is a first board member and a first lady chairperson of Singapore chapter. And under her tenure, the chapter has won the Best Overseas Award for the first time. She is also involved into various cultural activities such as classical dancing, singing, and instrumentalist. She has traveled to a lot of countries and now she has finally settled into Singapore. So now I would like Mrs. Kala Subramaniam Madam to continue with her topic. Hope everyone will find it interesting. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, good evening, members. It's a pleasure to be present here. And it's the second occasion that I've been speaking for this young members on the Women Symposium. And congratulations to all of you for successfully running this show. The President Preeti Chawla and the Vice President Abhay Chatat, and then the Neerav, Z, Ronak Shanu, Tech Support IaaS, DSC Services, and thanks to all of you. And sir, this was a wonderful presentation about the overview of corporate tax, and it was very useful. And Sarah has also covered about the Singapore industries, financial industries, and various factors as well, which has made my job also easier. Thanks, sir, for the wonderful presentation. And today, let me see about the Singapore and what are the opportunities available for the professional. About Singapore, Singapore is one of the world's smallest nations. It is a central point in Southeast Asia, and it is also a maritime gateway, as Sar was also mentioning in his speech, located at the crossroads of the east-west trade. It's a strategic location and has an easy market access, and it's easy to travel to nearby countries. There are 4 official languages in Singapore. It's Malay, English, Chinese, and Tamil. It's one of the safest countries in the world with consistently low crime rates and has a very transparent legal system. And Singapore is one of the only 3 city-states worldwide, including Vatican City and Monaco. It has a well-developed free market economy based primarily on trade, finance, and manufacturing. It is much a pro-business city. And tax rates are competitive, as Sarah has explained in detail about the tax structure of Singapore. And the regulatory environment is very transparent here. The Singapore GDP growth forecast has been maintained at 0.5 to 2.5%. The annual inflation rate in Singapore increased to 5.7 in April 2023. The economy depends heavily on exports, particularly of electronics, petroleum products, chemicals, medical and optical devices, and pharmaceuticals. And this is known worldwide, and Singapore boasts of an excellent transport system, public transport system, and amenities. Singapore is a flourishing financial center of international repute, servicing not only its domestic economy per se, but also the entire Asia-Pacific region. And regarding the education, a lot of international students, especially from India, head to Singapore, not only for postgraduate courses, but also for undergraduate courses. The several popular courses among Indians in Singapore, including business management, banking, and finance. In some of the programs, the students have to score well in SAT, TOEFL, IEL tests if needed. The island is home to several globally acclaimed universities offering various study options and curriculum. And this is also one of the Asia's biggest hubs for education, and it has excellent amenities and infrastructure. And some of the best future-oriented courses in Singapore include banking and finance, data analytics, technology-enabled services, digital media, cybersecurity. So jobs that focus on business growth and acquisition of new customers are also growing. After a dynamic year of 2022, it's bouncing back on the post-pandemic surge in economic activity. So each industry, as it sees its ups and downs, and certain professions remain highly sought. And what are the hottest professions in demand professions? technology and transformation, banking and financial services, because this is a financial hub, commerce, finance, human resources, sales marketing, supply chain, and procurement. Singapore's job market is one of the most competitive in the world. The reason is it's with a highly educated workforce and a thriving economy. Companies looks for the best and brightest talent. Fastest growing companies or the e-commerce. Job market looks healthy, but there are some headwinds. Global inflation and economic factors do affect the labor markets. Singapore economy relies on foreign trade and is very sensitive. For all workers, capability development is the surest solution. Continuous learning and upgrading is very important. And many of them have asked me this question: is this CA India when you come here it's enough? It is not. See, you have, when you are qualified, it is always good to add additional qualifications. And when you move to your country, let it be Singapore, let it be Hong Kong, any of the countries, see what are the courses that are available and which is when you see the industry that you're getting into. And that's why I think it is continuously important to upgrade your skill. Now, when I said there are some headwinds, because there is the global economic downturn, reduced employment opportunities. Ongoing pandemic crisis is still uncertain and may linger for some more time. Technological disruptions, particularly digitalization, will continue to induce structural changes that makes some jobs and skills redundant. But there are also very good news. Lifting of travel restrictions in Singapore and the region has boosted the recovery of professional services sector. Recovery in air travel and international visitor arrivals will continue to benefit sectors related to air transport, arts, entertainment, consumer-facing sectors like food and beverage services. So when we said financial service industry, and what are those industry? It covers banks, finance companies, venture capital companies. Sarah was explaining in detail about the VCC, insurance, securities, fund management companies, family offices, advisors, money brokers. Banking industry is a key player in the country financial market segment. Sound economic political environment, legal tax policies, enforcement against crime, money laundering contributed to status as Singapore as an international financial center. There were 131 banks in 2022. A private banking destination. This was also, if you would have noticed, Sarah was explaining in his presentation about the private banking destination for international investors. It's a wealth management hub, and that's why you see single family offices, multi-family offices coming up in Singapore. Financial services industry. There are much scope in the financial services, banking industry, as I told you, is a key player in the country's financial market segment, emerging as one of the strongest in the world. And it's a digital area. It's a new ABCD. AI, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud, and data. Robotic process automation, like machine first delivery model that leverages the best of what AI can provide to an enterprises. And then coming to compliance, AML and FATF, there is a strict enforcement against crime and money laundering. And what are the services performed by CA? Auditing, assurance, accounting, payroll, human resources, company secretarial services, taxation, on GST, on corporate tax, on transfer pricing. These are also Sarah was mentioning during his presentation. advisory, fund management, real estate, equipment rental services, compliance, corporate secretary. So there's a wide range of services performed by CA, and there are much scope for all the professionals in these areas. And now, this is I took from the SPF here. You can see what are the new skills that you need to have. For example, relationship management, research, sales and trading, product origination, equity capital, corporate finance, distribution. If you go for the relationship management, what are the new skills required? Customer mindset, data storytelling. And this is very important nowadays, global perspective. If you go to equity capital market and debt market, you need advanced digital acumen, data interpretation, influence and negotiation, project management, stakeholder management. When it comes to corporate finance, you need analytics and computational modeling, data interpretation and analysis. When it comes to distribution, what are the new skills you require? Advisory, data interpretation and analysis, influencing and negotiation, research, risk awareness. Okay, regarding the ICA, as we all know, ICA has spread its wings across the world. We have offices in so many countries like USA, UK, Singapore, Germany, Hong Kong, Dubai, Brazil, Switzerland, Israel, Vietnam, and many more. We have chapters all over the world and representative offices. I think there are more than 45 chapters we have and more representative offices. There is MOU and MRA signed with many of the international organizations. For example, they have signed with the CP Australia MRA, which gives a benefit of acquiring that qualification as well by appearing for one or two papers. And recently, as Preeti said in her introductory speech, after the effort has been going on for the last 10 to 12 years by ICA India with ISCA in Singapore. So finally, they could do an MOU for an associate pathway with ISCA. So ICA is a center of excellence and it is a digital learning hub. So when I was talking about the skills we need to update in the digital learning hub, there are a lot of courses that they have brought for the benefit of the members. So which covers including the capital markets. I've seen there is a language to learn the Japanese language also. So please make use of all this digital learning hub to keep updating your skills and attend the various courses. And they're also done a lot of collaboration with the business schools and licensed with the embassy in various countries. These are the areas for the CAs to have the scope and for the job. It's a finance, tax, debt. When it comes to banking, leverage, credit, capital markets, investments, ESG, which is a very, I think the last 2-3 years, we have been talking about a lot about ESG. And this is also one of the important topics which CAs can look into and also for the job profile. Then about the corporate finance, the fund management, the family office, the single family offices. Now, toolkit, how do you plan it? First, you need to have a mindset. Have a mindset like what you need, what the jobs you are looking for when you are looking for the overseas, what are the opportunities you are looking for, what is the industry you are looking for, and also assess yourself. And next is the skill set. What are the skill set that you need for a job? As you say, every day is a learning day. So keep upgrading your skills and also assess what is the skill you need for the job. And now, then you need to have the tool set. What are those? Have empathy at work. You have the ability to leverage social networking for professional growth. And when the Sarah was also mentioning about that, how do you enhance? Because they say network is net worth. So try to connect, have the social networking, strong communication skills, creativity, having a positive attitude, focus, self-confidence, and having the drive. So have this mindset, skill set, tool set when you apply for the job. And connectors, how do you connect when you want to apply for an opportunity abroad? How do you connect it? And there are connectors. These are the various human resource agents through whom you can connect. For Singapore, for example, you have Michael Page, Robert Walter, Kelly, eFinancial, Careers. In Hong Kong, you have jobsdb.com, CarriersJet, HK, classified in SCMP. Malaysia, you have Malaysia, Monroe Consulting Executive Recruiters. Thailand, Go Asia, Manpower, Panosa, Thailand, Bangkok Executive Search. You connect through the recruitment agencies or the overseas chapters. As I said, there are more than 45 overseas chapters across the world. Formal via email or LinkedIn, connect with the LinkedIn and other professional forums. Professional seminars are conducted by ICAA and various trade and institutional bodies across the world. So whenever you get an opportunity or a webinar, try to attend this. And then the professional friends, as we said, again, this comes on the network. How do you come to know often? Have friends, your ex-colleagues or the similar network and see if there is any opportunity and try to utilize that opportunity. And social network, relatives, friends, and families. Don't just work smart, but work smart on the right things. Thank you. If there are any questions, happy to attend.
Thank you, ma'am, for a very good ready reckoner and all the possible opportunities available for young chartered accountants in the country of Singapore. First, let me check if there are any questions. I don't think we have received any questions. We'll just wait for a couple of moments before we conclude the session.
Sure. I think there was a question which Sarah also has attended. Somebody asked, how do you get outsourced to India, these services?
Yeah.
And Sarah has already answered, because a lot of nowadays people look for these opportunities. And I see also a lot of Indian chartered accountants, even people have approached me when they're here, like how to get it out. So like accounting services, mainly people take the accounting services or secretarial services, even the tax services, now to do it from the back office work from India.
So that is a growing trend, I believe. So
yes, I've been seeing many. As I said, I've also even they are interested in the retail taxation also. Okay, so I have itself connected few of my colleagues and friends to Indian chartered accountants, because every NRI is also supposed to file a tax in India.
Correct.
Right, and that nowadays I think more and more NRIs are also coming to file the tax, which is a good move. So there are that industries. Actually, I'm seeing a lot of outsources happening also to India.
I'm sure the technological adaptation, especially post-COVID, has made
yes,
easier
exactly
for us in India to take up these services more often.
Exactly, that's what because now you can work from anywhere.
Correct.
Right, and that's why I said it is very now. Technology advancement and COVID has shown the way to work from anywhere. So it's not necessarily to be in the office. And there are some companies here still following this work from home, this hybrid system. Not all the companies are like strictly work from office. So there are a lot doing this hybrid system also here, which is continuing.
So we have one query from Dishant Somani from Mumbai. He's asking how to get a family office job in Singapore.
How to get a family office? See, that's what I said is like if he get to through the network, okay, or through the connectors, you need to look at the connectors which I have shared. There are a lot of connectors, 6-7 big connectors which I shared in my presentation, and the other one through the network. Okay, as I said, Singapore is a financial hub. There are more opportunities in banking, fund management, like family office, right? So it is another, as I said, you can connect through LinkedIn also. Like go to the LinkedIn, try to connect, see what are now you go to see, nowadays every information is available in Google. So go and see what are the fund houses and family offices in Singapore, right? And then connect it, go to the LinkedIn, see if you could connect with that person. And as you say, try to increase your connection with on the professional network. And that's how you come to know. Because many of the times, if you see through like the network, you get a job. One is also through the connector, and then another one is also like when you know in the network there is a position available, right? You try to apply that. So, and this is being a financial hub, so there's a lot of scope in all these areas. Like VCC is like 2-3 years. It's a new concept, variable capital companies. And the other one, I would like to add one more thing. So whenever people, hello.
Yeah, ma'am. Please go ahead.
See, whenever anyone gets an opportunity, please assess. There are sometimes I know one of our relative itself that was a fake call. Okay, so assess, go and check the company, or if you have a network, assess about the company, about the salary, because when you're coming to a place abroad, you need to know whether you can manage the family. So assess everything and then take a step. See, it's not only moving abroad. You need to assess everything, your family, your monetary benefits.
Correct, ma'am. Obviously.
And your growth, your career, everything matters, right? Your career, your growth is also matters.
Absolutely. I think that is a very interesting point, because nowadays it is very easy to fall prey to these scams, especially.
There are a lot of startups also, right? A lot of startups also. So assess, everyone has to assess. We have to assess ourselves and assess the risk, right? And what is the risk you're taking and what is your compromising? So that's very important before you take a job.
So this is one question, like during this discussion only with you, and I would like to put up with ma'am, you also, and with sir also. There is a lot of chatter about, a lot of Indian startups and Indian firms getting registered in Singapore and wanting to get listed in Singapore, and the government wanting them to, switch their bases to India. So what is your take on that? Like, why should a company or a startup who is predominantly operating in India be registered in Singapore or be registered in India?
Sir, you want to take this first, sir?
Yeah. How do you make me to come in?
Sir?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
I'm not seeing my face.
We can see you, sir.
We can see you, sir. We can see you very well.
Fantastic. Listen, as cities, there are, what you said is right. The most of the top Indians in banking sector, they're all in Singapore. My prediction is 30,000 Indians are holding the topmost position in most of the financial institutions in Singapore. And they're also the initiator of most of these companies, VCC companies, family offices. They are assisting people to start and establish, because they don't have $200, $300 million of money. And they also have working in banks, a lot of senior position, because they moved from India to London, Dubai, in various big banks, and then in the private banks, years of experience, moved to Singapore. Singapore is the third largest financial center in the world, fourth largest forex center in the world. So the importance of Singapore is known to them, and they are here and they're doing it very successfully. And if your question is that how to get a job in this institution, see, you have to start somewhere and trying to learn quickly and climb the rope and come up in life. Mount Everest, you cannot climb overnight, right? You have 4 stages, right? Base camp, acclimatize yourself, and then go another 600 meters up, breathe, acclimatize yourself, go to the next camp. So, initially I was not telling my years of experience. I tell now, I've practiced 46 years in Singapore. I came to Singapore in 1976.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, sir. See, the other one, Deep, if I have to answer a question, why in Singapore, right? Why it's getting registered in Singapore? It's again like what we have discussed. It's because of the conducive legal and tax policies. It's 17% here, the tax, and the reputation for integrity and the strict enforcement against the crime and the money laundering, which is said it's also FATF country. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is, and this is a passport to other regional, places across the Southeast Asia. And the incentive, the strict regulatory system, it's what like make people to register in Singapore. For example, in the fund management industry, if you see all the offshore funds, right, the investment manager will be sitting in Singapore, right? Because that's the advantage of being in Singapore. As you said, this is the greatest advantages because I am also coming from an fund management industry. It's an FATF country. So that itself gives the investors a confidence, right? And so when you have global investors, the confidence is very important. See how banking runs is a trust.
True. So, like you said, it is a seal of approval and quality.
Yeah, it's a sound economic and political environment. See, all this contribute, right?
Correct, absolutely.
And that's where, as I said, if you go and go and deposit in the bank, why that's a trust.
Correct.
So banking industry runs on trust. So the financial, either a fund or the financial, most of the financial industry runs on trust. And that's how people invest.
So we have received one more question from Varun from Mumbai, and it is sort of an interesting and a very relevant question, I would say. He asks, to move to Singapore, what would be a minimum salary that one should expect and consider to be able to cover the living expenses in Singapore and also to be able to save a decent amount of money?
Okay, if you ask me, then Sarah also can add it, right? See, anything, I think I would say if in the current scenario with the cost of living and inflation is not only to Singapore, okay? It's now global inflation and we don't know what is the trend going on, and we see the interest rates keep hiking and we expect more interest rates hike is also to happen. So in the current scenario, if someone is moving to Singapore, at least like you need to have minimum 10,000 K salary to manage.
10,000 SGD.
SGD.
Okay.
Understand? So you have to plan that. And then again, see, it depends like family, how many members, because there is schooling. Okay, the local schooling, you don't need to pay fees. They have an excellent education system here in Singapore. And then rent. But I want to tell you also in the Singapore, the last 7 years, Singapore rent has hit the roof for various factors. Okay, especially starting from the last year, 2022, mid to now, the rent has, you all have read in the paper as well, it has gone. So the thing is, they have to manage the basic expenses. What are the basic expenses? The rent, you need to have your food, and then the education. Right? So, sir, do you want to add?
Yeah, please.
Please add, sir. So
no, I can add. Listen, I'm not seeing my face. Anyway, we talk.
We can see you, sir.
I can't see myself. Okay. Now, listen, what is important is, are you married? Are you single? Whether school-going children, whether you like to have a car. Car is prohibitively expensive because public transport is fantastic. So if you like to have a car, then your lifestyle all will go to decide what is the right thing to do. Now, what she said is right if you don't have much ambition, much expenses. But Singapore is the best learning ground in the world. I used to tell my friends, if you work in Singapore, you go to any country in the world, you go to Europe, you go to UK, you want to work in Japan, Korea, or US, you can at least to carry out your work because you have learned everything in Singapore. So my advice to all the accountants is that any job, pick up, work hard, learn 2-3 years, you can conquer the world. It's a fantastic place to learn. The way in which the system operates, make you to learn, but you should have the interest to learn.
Absolutely.
Another thing is, after 2 years, you will love to live in Singapore. You don't want to leave Singapore. A lot of expatriates, what they do is, they'll say, no, I'm already old, I'm going, cost of living is high, I'm going to India. They go to India for 6 months and then pack up again and come back to Singapore. Because after you lived in Singapore, it will be difficult for you to go and opt yourself to live in any other country.
So we've received one more question, which I think both of you all have very lucidly already answered. But just for the sake of all the participants, I'll ask that question. Can a CA get a job in Singapore directly as a CA, or is there any additional qualification that is preferred or that is required that the person should have to be able to get a job in Singapore?
See, to me, this is very subjective, right? Because there are people who have directly taken it also. But if you ask me what I would advise is, see, it's like, we are in the changing world, right? So which means we need to always, like I say, keep upgrading your skills. Yes, a CA is a wonderful, excellent qualification, no denials. But when you're moving to Singapore, as I said, there are multiple ISCA. There are MAs conducting so many courses. There is company secretary courses. So you all have to see in a country where you're working, what is relevant for your job, which can help to do the job perform better.
Absolutely.
Right? So that is what you need to assess. For any qualification, even an MBA is coming here. So you need to see what job you're taking and what you need to upgrade for your local job, because you're going to adhere to these Singapore laws, right? And maybe if you're in banking, you're going to handle with your global investors. Or if you're registered with MAS, you're going to handle with MAS. And MAS also do a lot of courses here, which is very nice. And that helps you to do your job better. Right? So, and if you have to sustain in your job, one is sustaining and then growing in the job. Right? So it is subjective. It is not that you cannot get a job, come with a CA, but don't come only with this mindset. That's why I said that mindset is important. Don't come only with, I'm a CA, so no. So you need to upgrade, right? As I say, every day is a learning day. Sir said he has registered with that $2,000 he paid and become a member to learn. So the learning never stops because we have to learn. Otherwise, we are left behind. In this current world, we have to keep learning, right? Upgrading ourselves to sustain in a job. So he can come, but then at the same time, need to keep upgrading his skills and need to understand what is relevant for the job that make him to perform better, to understand the local laws, the regulations, and related to the job.
Absolutely true, ma'am. Absolutely true. I think we don't have any further questions. So I think it would be time to conclude our session. I thank Kala ma'am for taking time out of a precious schedule and sharing what I could say is a ready reckoner of a sort for what opportunities are available to chartered accountants in Singapore. And ma'am, it would be a pleasure for us if you could share the PPT with our members,
Sure.
because
Sure.
I've been getting a lot of messages for people asking me, we want the PPT from ma'am.
Sure.
Absolutely, it's an amazing ready reckoner, like I said. And
Yeah, sure.
one important thing that I think you shared at the end, which I am sure is relevant for all the young chartered accountants, not only in Singapore or wanting to go to Singapore, but everywhere in the world, is that you need to understand what you need to do in the job to sustain and grow. You need to learn and you need to keep growing. And wonderful example from Narayan Mohan sir also, that even after 46 years, he's hungry to learn. Like he said, he's
Yes.
hungry to learn, and he's a live example for all of us. That even
Well
after
said.
46 years, there is no room for complacency. And once again, thank you, Kala ma'am also, and Narayan Mohan sir also, for taking precious time. I understand there is a public holiday in Singapore, and you've been very gracious to spend your public holiday with us, with your extended family back in India. And thank you once again on behalf of Women and Youth Members Excellence Committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. And we soon look forward to meet you in person as well, and
Sure.
to have you for one of our sessions in the future.
Sure. And thanks, Deep, because I really enjoyed that the last maybe 15-20 minutes. It was more like a panel discussion. That was very interesting. So I participate here in panel discussion also. I say that's interesting because when you get a question, then you share your views. And sir also, sir, thank you so much, sir. So that was really nice. And you said very rightly, even he is our inspiration. The
Absolutely.
continuous learning. Thanks, sir. And thanks to each one of you for this wonderful support and an excellent session. And I wish you all the very best to all the members,
Thank you,
to all the
thank you
viewers
so
from
much.
here. As I said, have a positive attitude. Be happy always.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. अय्याज एंड कर दो मीटिंग.